Lisa Martinez stood at the observation deck of Kepler station and watched the enemy ships circle them like hungry wolves. 3 weeks had passed since the Vorac fleet first appeared at the edge of their system. 3 weeks of waiting, hoping, and slowly losing hope. The mining station floated in the asteroid belt, far from any major trade routes. It was a small place with only 200 people. Most were miners who came here to dig rare metals from the floating rocks. Others were scientists who studied the strange minerals they found. Lisa was their leader, the person everyone looked to when things got bad. Right now, things were very bad. Through the thick glass windows, she could see 47 alien ships. They looked like giant insects made of metal and flesh. The Vorac vessels pulsed with a sickly green light. Sometimes she thought she could see movement inside them, as if living things were crawling around in their walls. The sight made her stomach turn. Dr. Kevin Walsh walked up beside her. He was a thin man with gray hair who had spent most of his life studying rocks from space. Now he spent his time listening to radio signals from across the galaxy. The news he brought was never good. Any word from the outside? Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer from his face. Kevin shook his head. Nothing good. I picked up a transmission from the Tau sector this morning. The Vorac hit 3 more colonies there. The defenders lasted less than 6 hours. Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The Tau sector was on the other side of known space. The Vorac were everywhere now, spreading like a disease across the galaxy. They had come from the dark regions beyond the star maps, where no one had ever bothered to explore. At first, the attack seemed random. The insect-like aliens would arrive at a peaceful world and demand surrender. If the people said no, the Vorac would crack open their planets like eggs and take everyone inside. If they said yes, the result was the same. The Vorac wanted bodies, not prisoners. What about the Galactic Cooperative? Lisa asked. Surely their fleets are fighting back somewhere. Kevin's laugh had no humor in it. The Cooperative is falling apart. The Zilani surrendered their entire home system last week. Their crystal cities are nothing but dust now. The Marathi have retreated to the deep ocean worlds and refuse to come out. Even the Cavalry with all their advanced technology are running scared. Lisa knew about the other species in the galaxy. The Zilani were peaceful crystal beings who built beautiful cities that sparkled like diamonds. They were artists and philosophers, not warriors. The Marathi lived in water and hated violence of any kind. The Cavalry were the most advanced race anyone knew about, but they were also proud and careful. None of them were prepared for an enemy that cared nothing about talking or making deals. Amy Johnson, their communications officer, called out from her station across the room. She was young, maybe 25 years old, and had joined the station crew to see the galaxy. Instead, she got to watch it die. Commander Martinez, I'm getting reports from the inner worlds. The Vorac just hit New Geneva. Lisa felt her heart sink. New Geneva was one of the largest human colonies with over 10 million people. It was supposed to be safe, protected by defense satellites and a small fleet of patrol ships. How long did they last? She asked. 2 days, Amy replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The defense grid held them off for a while, but then the Vorac brought in their big ships. The biocruisers just absorbed the weapons fire and kept coming. Dr. Walsh pulled up a star chart on his tablet computer. Red marks showed where the Vorac had struck. There were so many red marks now that the map looked like it had some kind of disease. They're not just attacking randomly, he said, studying the pattern. Look at this. They hit the mining worlds first, then the agricultural planets, then the population centers. They're taking out our food and resources before they come for the people. Lisa studied the chart and felt cold fear creep up her spine. They're smart. Smarter than we thought. Captain Jake Morrison entered the observation deck carrying a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. His merchant ship, the Stellar Wind, had been docked at Kepler station for repairs when the Vorac arrived. Now his fast cargo hauler was trapped just like everyone else. Jake was a space trader who had traveled to every corner of known space. He had dealt with pirates, corrupt officials, and dangerous cargo. But he had never seen anything like this. I've been talking to the other ship captains, he said. The ones who made it here before the blockade went up. They all tell the same story. The Vorac don't want to trade or negotiate. They just want to harvest. Harvest what? Lisa asked, though she was afraid she already knew. People, Jake replied. Living sentient beings. They take them back to their ships and do something to them. The few survivors who escaped say they could hear screaming from inside the Vorthak vessels for days after the attacks. Amy Johnson had been listening to their conversation while monitoring the radio channels. Suddenly, she straightened up in her chair. "Commander, I'm picking up something strange. It's coming from one of the Vorthak ships." Lisa walked over to Amy's station. "What kind of something?" "It sounds like voices, but not Vorthak voices. Human voices, and they're speaking different languages. I can hear English, Chinese, Arabic, and others I don't recognize." The color drained from Dr. Walsh's face. "They're not just killing the people they take. They're keeping them alive for some reason." Lisa felt sick. The thought of human colonists trapped inside those horrible bioships, possibly being used for experiments or worse, made her want to scream. But she was the commander here. These people were looking to her for answers she didn't have. "How long before they get tired of waiting?" she asked Jake. The space captain looked out at the alien fleet. "Hard to say. They've been playing with us so far, just keeping us trapped. But eventually they'll decide we're not worth the time and just blast us apart. Days? Weeks? Days, maybe hours. I've seen their attack patterns from the reports. They usually siege a place for a while to study the defenses. Then they hit hard and fast." Lisa walked back to the observation windows and stared out at the enemy ships. Somewhere out there, maybe on those very vessels, were people from the colonies that had already fallen. People who were counting on anyone to come and save them. But who was left to do the saving? The great powers of the galaxy were either destroyed, hiding, or running away as fast as they could. The Galactic Cooperative, which was supposed to protect peaceful worlds like Kepler Station, had abandoned them to save themselves. "Keep monitoring all frequencies," she told Amy. "If there's anyone out there, anyone at all who can help us, we need to find them." As the hours passed, more bad news came in over the radio. Colony after colony fell to the Vorthak advance. Defense fleets were destroyed or scattered. Entire species were going extinct in a matter of days. Lisa Martinez had been in the space service for 15 years. She had handled emergencies before, equipment failures and accidents that could kill everyone on the station. But this was different. This was the end of everything she had ever known. Outside the windows, the Vorthak ships continued their slow circle, waiting like buzzards for their prey to die of thirst. Inside the station, 200 people went about their daily routines, trying to pretend that everything was normal. But everyone knew the truth. Help was not coming. No one was left to send it. The fourth week of the siege brought something unexpected to Kepler Station. Not rescue or relief, but stories. Strange tales that spread through the corridors like whispers in the dark. People gathered in small groups during their breaks, sharing rumors they had heard from traders and travelers who had passed through the outer regions of space. Danny Rodriguez was the first to speak of them. He was a young engineer who kept the station's power running and its air clean. During the evening meal period, when most people tried to forget their situation by eating together, Danny put down his food tray and looked around the dining hall. "I heard something weird before the Vorthak showed up," he said quietly. "Remember that cavalry trader who stopped here about 2 months ago? The one with the fancy purple ship?" Several people nodded. The cavalry were known for their expensive technology and their pride. They rarely spoke to other species unless they had to. Well, this trader, he was different. Nervous, you know? He kept looking over his shoulder like something was following him. And he told me about ships he'd seen in the Outer Rim territories. Ships that didn't match any design in the galactic databases. Susan Blake, the station's maintenance chief, looked up from her meal. She was a practical woman who had little time for ghost stories. Traders see lots of things that aren't there, especially when they've been alone in space too long. But Danny shook his head. This wasn't space madness. The Cathari had sensor recordings. Ships made of some kind of metal he'd never seen before. They were smaller than most vessels, but they moved in ways that shouldn't be possible, and they were armed with weapons that gave off energy signatures unlike anything in known space. Dr. Walsh had been listening from the next table. He walked over and sat down with the group. What else did this trader say about these ships? He called them ghost ships from the Deathworlds. Said they came from a region of space that was marked as uninhabitable on all the star charts. Worlds with poisonous air and water that fell from the sky like acid rain. Captain Morrison, who had been picking at his food without much appetite, suddenly became interested. I've heard similar stories. Different sources, but the same basic details. Ships from worlds where nothing should be able to live. That's impossible, Susan said firmly. Life can't evolve on worlds like that. The conditions would kill any living thing before it could develop intelligence. But Morrison leaned forward, his voice dropping to match Danny's whisper. What if they didn't evolve there? What if they came from somewhere else and learned to survive in conditions that would kill the rest of us? Amy Johnson had finished her communications shift and joined the group. She had been monitoring radio signals from across the galaxy for weeks now, listening to the Vorac advance and the fall of civilization. Her young face looked older now, marked by stress and lack of sleep. I've been picking up fragments of transmissions from the outer rim, she said. Most of it is just static or automated distress beacons from abandoned stations. But sometimes I hear voices speaking in languages that aren't in our translation databases, and the few words our computers can understand don't make sense. What kind of words? Dr. Walsh asked. Amy thought for a moment. Military terms mostly. Words about fighting and weapons, but they use phrases that sound almost suicidal. Things like hold the line and no retreat and death before dishonor. The computer translates them, but the concepts don't match any known species psychology. Ryan Cooper, one of the younger technicians, had been listening quietly. Now he spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. My grandfather used to tell me stories about finding derelict ships in the deep void. This was back when he was working on the survey teams that mapped the outer territories. Everyone turned to look at Ryan. He was normally a quiet person who kept to himself and did his work without complaint, but now he had their complete attention. Grandpa said they found a ship drifting near the Vale Nebula. It was old, maybe centuries old, and built from materials they didn't recognize. Primitive stuff like steel and aluminum alloys. But the hull was covered in burn marks and impact craters that told a story. What kind of story? Danny asked. A battle story. The ship had fought something huge. Something that had weapons powerful enough to melt metal. But somehow the little ship had won. The damage patterns showed that it had gotten close enough to its enemy to use short-range weapons. Really short range, like ramming distance, Susan shook her head. No sane species fights at ramming distance. That's suiciding, that's what Grandpa thought too. But when they got inside the ship, they found things that didn't make sense. Pictures and symbols showing creatures that looked almost like us, but different. Stronger maybe. More aggressive looking. And there were weapons everywhere. Not just the ship's guns, but personal weapons. Hundreds of them. Dr. Walsh was taking notes on his tablet. What happened to the ship? Where is it now? Ryan's expression grew sad. Lost in a bureaucratic mix-up. The survey team turned it over to the cooperative authorities and it disappeared into some classified research facility. Grandpa tried to follow up on it for years, but he kept getting told it was either destroyed or never existed in the first place. Captain Morrison was nodding slowly. I've heard similar stories from other traders. Ships that don't match any known design, always found in the dangerous regions where most people won't go, and always showing signs of battle damage. But what does this have to do with our situation? Amy asked. Even if these mystery ships exist, they're probably just pirates or smugglers using modified vessels. It was Dr. Walsh who answered, his voice thoughtful. What if they're not pirates? What if there's something else entirely? Think about it. Ships from Deathworlds built for fighting, operated by beings who seem to have no fear of close combat. What if they're exactly what we need right now? Danny looked skeptical. You're talking about legends and ghost stories. Even if these ships exist, how would we contact them? And why would they help us? Because, Morrison said slowly, if the stories are true, then these beings understand something that the rest of the galaxy has forgotten. They understand that sometimes you have to fight. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the station's communication system. Lisa Martinez's voice echoed through the dining hall, tired but determined. All personnel, please report to your duty stations. We're receiving multiple distress signals from the inner colonies. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. As people began to file out of the dining hall, the stories they had shared hung in the air like smoke. Ghost ships and death worlds, mysterious warriors, and impossible battles. It sounded like fantasy, like the kind of tales people told to comfort themselves when reality became too harsh to bear. But as Amy Johnson returned to her communications station and began monitoring the frequencies again, she found herself thinking about those unknown languages she had detected, about voices speaking words that her computer couldn't understand, using concepts that didn't match any known species. Maybe, she thought as she adjusted her equipment to scan the outer rim territories, it was time to try reaching out to the darkness. Maybe somewhere in that vast emptiness something was listening, something that might understand their desperate situation and be willing to help. The Vorac ships continued their slow circle around Kepler station, patient as death itself. But for the first time in weeks, some of the people trapped inside began to hope that they might not be as alone in the universe as they had thought. In the deep void beyond the mapped territories, ancient sensors detected the faint signals coming from the besieged mining station, and in the darkness between the stars something began to stir. Dr. Kevin Walsh had not slept in 36 hours. He sat hunched over his communication equipment, surrounded by empty coffee cups and half-eaten meal packets. His eyes were red from staring at screens, but he refused to rest. Not when he was so close to something that might save them all. 3 days had passed since the conversation in the dining hall about ghost ships and death worlds. 3 days of thinking about those mysterious vessels that traders whispered about in dark corners of space stations. 3 days of wondering if those stories might be more than just tales told by frightened people. The communication array on Kepler station was designed for short-range transmissions between mining ships and the main facility, but Kevin had been working on it for weeks now, stripping power from other systems and rerouting it through the radio equipment. He had borrowed energy from the lights, the heating systems, even the artificial gravity generators in some sections. Lisa Martinez found him still working when she made her morning rounds. The commander looked as tired as everyone else on the station. The stress of leading 200 people through what felt like the end of the world was wearing on her badly. "Kevin, you need to rest," she said, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Whatever you're trying to do, it can wait a few hours." He shook his head without looking away from his screens. "No, it can't wait. I've boosted our transmission power by 400%. If there's anyone out there in the outer rim territories, they should be able to hear us now." "And what exactly are you going to tell them?" Lisa asked. Assuming these mystery ships actually exist and assuming they're listening, Kevin turned to look at her and she was surprised by the determination in his tired eyes. "The truth, that we're dying here, that the galaxy is being torn apart by monsters, that if there's anyone out there who knows how to fight, we need their help." Lisa wanted to tell him he was wasting his time chasing ghost stories, but the truth was they had tried everything else. Their distress signals to the Galactic Cooperative had gone unanswered for weeks. The major powers were either destroyed, hiding, or too busy saving themselves to care about a small mining station. "What makes you think these mysterious beings would want to help us?" she asked. "Because," Kevin said, adjusting his equipment one more time, "if the stories are true, then they come from worlds where they had to fight just to survive. Maybe they understand something that the rest of us have forgotten. Maybe they remember what it means to protect the innocent." He activated his transmission array and spoke into the microphone with a voice that carried across the void toward the unknown regions of space. "This is Kepler station calling any ships in the outer rim territories. We are under siege by hostile forces known as the Vorac swarm. All galactic cooperative fleets have been destroyed or scattered. We have 200 civilians trapped here, including families with children. If there is anyone out there who can help us, please respond. This is Dr. Kevin Walsh of Kepler station. Please, if you can hear this message, we need help." He repeated the message several times, then sat back and waited. The silence that followed seemed to stretch on forever. Minutes turned into hours. Kevin kept adjusting his equipment, trying different frequencies, boosting the signal strength even more. Amy Johnson came to relieve him at his station, but Kevin refused to leave. "Just a few more hours," he insisted. "I know someone is out there." By evening, most people had given up hope that the transmission would bring any response. The dining hall was quieter than usual as people ate their meals and tried not to think about what tomorrow might bring. The Vorac ships had been moving closer to the station all day, tightening their circle like a noose. Kevin was fighting to stay awake when Amy suddenly straightened up at her communication station. Her eyes went wide and she grabbed Kevin's arm. "Doctor, I'm getting something. The signal is very faint, but it's definitely artificial. Someone is responding." Kevin rushed to his equipment and began working to clean up the signal. Static filled the speakers, mixed with strange interference patterns he had never heard before. But slowly through the noise a voice began to emerge. It was unlike any voice they had ever heard. Deep and rough, speaking in a language that their translation computers struggled to process. The words came through broken and distorted, but gradually the meaning became clear. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Ben Harris of the Earth vessel Defiant. We have received your distress call. What is your current situation? Kevin's hands were shaking as he grabbed the microphone. Earth vessel, this is Dr. Kevin Walsh. Did you say Earth? Are you the ones people call the Deathworlders? There was a pause, and then something that might have been laughter came through the static. But it was not the kind of laughter that came from joy. It was the sound of someone who had seen too much fighting and found dark humor in terrible situations. Doc, we prefer to call ourselves humans. And yeah, we come from what you might call a death world. How many enemy ships are surrounding your position? Lisa Martinez had rushed to the communication station when word spread that someone had answered their call. She took the microphone from Kevin with steady hands, though her heart was beating fast. This is Commander Lisa Martinez, Station Commander. We count 47 Vorac bioships ranging from small fighters to large cruisers. They've had us under siege for almost 4 weeks. Roger that, Commander. We're familiar with the Vorac. Nasty pieces of work. How much time do you estimate before they make their final attack? Captain Morrison had joined the crowd gathering around the communication station. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Jake Morrison. Based on their behavior patterns, I'd say we have maybe 12 hours before they get tired of waiting and just blast us apart. Copy that, Captain. We're currently 3 hours out from your position. Try to hold on until we get there. Dr. Walsh looked at his scanner readings and felt his heart sink. Earth vessel, how many ships are you bringing? Our sensors show only 12 contacts approaching from your direction. That's correct, Doc. 12 ships. The silence that followed this revelation was broken by Captain Morrison. 12 ships against 47? That's suicide. You'll be slaughtered. The voice that came back over the radio was calm and confident in a way that made no sense given the odds. Captain, we appreciate your concern, but we've handled worse odds before. Just keep your heads down and try not to get in our way when things get interesting. Lisa found her voice again. Captain Harris, I need to know what we're dealing with here. What kind of weapons do you have? What's your battle plan? Commander, we're bringing nuclear missiles, particle beam cannons, and a bad attitude. As for our battle plan, it's pretty simple. We're going to fly into the middle of their formation and start breaking things until they're all dead, or they run away. Kevin stared at the radio equipment as if it had started speaking in riddles. That's not a plan, that's madness. Doc, where we come from, madness and courage look pretty much the same. The only difference is whether or not it works. Amy Johnson was monitoring her sensors and tracking the approaching ships. Commander, I'm reading 12 contacts moving at incredible speed. They're traveling faster than anything I've ever seen before. Earth vessels, Lisa said into the microphone. What are your ship specifications? Our sensors are having trouble getting clear readings on your vessels. Don't worry about the technical details, Commander. Just know that we build our ships tough and we train our crews tougher. We've been fighting our whole lives. First against our own planet and then against anything stupid enough to threaten innocent people. The transmission crackled with static, and then Captain Harris spoke again. Kepler Station, you should know that we picked up some of those bioships' transmissions on our way in. We know what they've been doing to the people they capture. That stops today. His voice changed, becoming harder and colder than winter on an airless moon. The Vorac made a mistake when they started harvesting civilians. They made an even bigger mistake when they trapped families with children. We don't like bullies, and we really don't like bullies who hurt kids. Captain Harris, Lisa said, what should we do when you arrive? Keep your people away from the viewports and make sure your hull is sealed tight. This is going to get messy, and we don't want any of you getting hurt by flying debris. Other than that, just sit back and watch us work. The connection began to fade as the human ships moved closer and the Vorac started jamming communications. But Captain Harris's final words came through clear and strong. Kepler Station, this is the cavalry. Help is on the way. The human fleet arrived exactly 3 hours after their first radio contact, and everything changed in an instant. Amy Johnson was the first to see them on her sensors. 12 bright points of light dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the star system. Commander, they're here, she called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. 12 ships, just like they said, but the energy readings are off the charts. I've never seen anything like this. Lisa Martinez rushed to the observation deck along with half the station's population. Through the thick windows they could see the Vorac bioships that had surrounded them for weeks. The alien vessels were massive things that looked like insects crossed with machines, their hulls pulsing with that sickly green light they all knew too well. But now something was different. The Vorac ships were moving. turning away from their lazy patrol patterns to face this new threat. Even from a distance, it was clear that the aliens were alarmed. Their bioships began forming up into attack formations, preparing for battle. Dr. Walsh was studying his sensor equipment when the first human ship came into visual range. "My God," he whispered. "Look at them." The Earth vessels were smaller than anyone had expected. They looked nothing like the sleek ships built by the Galactic Cooperative or the organic curves of Vorac bioships. Instead, they were angular and brutal, covered in thick armor plating and bristling with weapon systems. They looked exactly like what they were, machines built for war. Captain Morrison had seen warships from a dozen different species during his travels, but these human vessels made them all look like toys. "Those aren't exploration ships or cargo haulers," he said quietly. "Those are pure military hardware, built by people who really understand fighting." The lead human ship, the one Captain Harris had called the Defiant, was moving straight toward the center of the Vorac formation. It showed no sign of slowing down or trying to avoid the enemy vessels. Behind it, the other 11 human ships spread out into what looked like an attack formation. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Harris." The radio crackled. "You might want to dim the lights and hold on to something. We're about to show these bugs what happens when they mess with innocent people." Lisa grabbed the communication microphone. "Captain Harris, there are 47 enemy ships out there." "Are you sure about this?" "Commander, we're sure. We've been preparing for this fight our whole lives." The first human ship to engage was a vessel Amy's sensors, identified as the Iron Will. It dove straight into the heart of the Vorac formation like a hawk attacking a flock of birds. Its weapons opened fire with an intensity that forced the station's sensors to automatically adjust their settings to avoid being overloaded. "Impossible," Dr. Walsh breathed, staring at his readouts. "Those energy signatures suggest they're using controlled nuclear explosions as weapons. The radiation levels alone should kill their own crews." But the humans kept fighting. The Iron Will's captain, someone called Patricia Wells according to the radio chatter, was shouting orders to her crew as her ship tore through the enemy formation. "All weapons, continuous fire. Don't let up for a second. Make these bugs pay for every inch of space they take." The human ships moved unlike anything the people of Kepler Station had ever seen. They didn't try to stay at safe distances and exchange long-range fire like normal space battles. Instead, they charged straight at the Vorac bioships, firing everything they had as they closed to point-blank range. When a Vorac weapon struck one of the human vessels, the expected result didn't happen. Instead of withdrawing to make repairs or retreating to safety, the damaged human ship seemed to become even more aggressive. It pressed its attack harder, using its wounds as motivation rather than weakness. Captain Morrison watched in amazement as a human destroyer called the Last Stand took several direct hits from Vorac bioweapons. The alien attacks tore holes in its armor and left entire sections of the ship exposed to space. But instead of pulling back, the human captain did something that made no sense. "Ram that biocruiser," came the voice over the radio channels. "If our guns won't punch through its hide, we'll shove a nuclear warhead down its throat the old-fashioned way." The Last Stand, trailing atmosphere and debris from its damaged sections, accelerated directly at the largest Vorac ship in the area. The alien vessel tried to turn away, but the human ship was faster and more determined. The collision when it came was spectacular, a nuclear explosion that lit up the entire star system. "They're insane," Danny Rodriguez whispered, watching the battle through the observation windows. "Completely, utterly insane." But Amy Johnson was studying her sensor readings and beginning to understand something important. "No, they're not insane. Look at the results." They're winning, it was true. The Vorac fleet, which had seemed unbeatable for 4 weeks, was falling apart under the human assault. The bioship's natural ability to regenerate damage meant nothing when the humans were hitting them with nuclear weapons at close range. Their superior numbers meant nothing when the human ships fought like wild animals with nothing to lose. A human fighter pilot named Kate Anderson ejected from her destroyed craft after ramming it into a Vorac frigate. Instead of dying in the vacuum of space like any sensible person would, she somehow survived long enough for another human ship to pick her up. The rescue took place in the middle of the battle, with weapons fire all around them. "How is that possible?" Susan Blake asked, staring at the rescue operation. "No one can survive in vacuum without a suit for that long." Dr. Walsh was checking his instruments again and again, not believing what they told him. According to these readings, humans can survive in conditions that would kill most species within seconds. Their biology is adapted for environments that we would consider lethal. The battle raged for 3 hours. 3 hours of the most violent combat anyone on Kepler station had ever witnessed. The humans fought with a fury that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside them, a rage that burned hotter than their nuclear weapons. Captain Ben Harris's voice came over the radio during the worst of the fighting, calm and steady despite the chaos around him. All human vessels, remember why we're here. There are families on that station, people who called for help when no one else would answer. We don't leave our own behind, and we don't let bullies hurt innocent people. The Vorac tried everything they could think of. They sent their fastest bioships to attack the station directly, hoping to force the humans to break off their assault. But human fighters intercepted them before they could get close. They concentrated their fire on single human vessels, trying to overwhelm them with superior numbers, but the humans fought in coordinated groups, supporting each other with a teamwork that seemed instinctive. Most importantly, the Vorac tried to do what had worked against every other species in the galaxy. They tried to make the humans afraid. They broadcast images of the civilians they had captured from other worlds, showed what happened to people who opposed them. They transmitted the screams of their victims, hoping to break the humans' will to fight. Instead, it made the humans fight harder. "You should not have shown us that," Captain Harris said over the open radio channels, his voice cold as deep space. "You should never have shown us what you did to those people. Now, this isn't just about protecting one station. This is about making sure you never hurt anyone ever again." The tide of battle turned completely in that moment. The humans stopped fighting defensively and went on the attack with a violence that shocked even the Vorac. They hunted down every bioship that tried to escape, chasing them through the asteroid field and destroying them one by one. When it was over, the space around Kepler station was filled with the burning wreckage of 47 Vorac vessels. Not a single alien ship had escaped. The humans had suffered damage to most of their vessels and lost 2 ships entirely, but they had achieved total victory. Lisa Martinez stood at the observation window, staring out at the human fleet as they took up defensive positions around the station. For the first time in 4 weeks, the space around Kepler station belonged to the good guys. The first human to board Kepler station was Captain Ben Harris himself. Lisa Martinez had expected someone who looked like a warrior from the old stories, maybe covered in scars and carrying weapons. What she got was a man who looked surprisingly normal, except for his eyes. Those eyes had seen too much fighting and too much death, but they were also kind. "Commander Martinez," Harris said, offering his hand in the human custom of shaking hands. "Sorry we took so long getting here. We came as soon as we got your message." Lisa shook his hand and was surprised by how strong his grip was. "Captain Harris, I don't know how to thank you. You saved all our lives." Harris smiled, but it was a tired smile. "Ma'am, that's what we do. Someone calls for help, we answer. Doesn't matter if they're human or alien. Doesn't matter how far we have to travel. Good people deserve to be protected." Dr. Walsh approached the group, his scientific curiosity overcoming his exhaustion. "Captain, I have to ask about your world. The stories we heard about Earth being a death world, are they true?" Harris nodded, and Lisa noticed the scars on his hands and face that she had missed before. They looked like burns and cuts from a lifetime of dangerous living. "Doc, Earth is what you might call a challenging place to live. Our atmosphere has 21% oxygen, which is toxic to most species. Our gravity is about twice what you're used to here. And our weather can kill you in a dozen different ways. But how do you survive in conditions like that?" Amy Johnson asked. She had left her communication station to meet the humans, and her young face showed wonder and fear in equal measure. "Same way any species survives, Miss Johnson. We adapt or we die. Humans learned a long time ago that the universe doesn't care about fair fights or even odds. So we got tough and we got stubborn, and we learned to take care of each other." Captain Morrison had been studying the human ships through the observation windows. "Captain Harris, your vessels, they're unlike anything I've ever seen. The way you fight, it's like you're trying to get killed." Harris laughed, and this time there was genuine humor in it. "Captain, there's an old saying from Earth. The best defense is a good offense. We learned that fighting at long range just gives your enemy time to think of ways to hurt you. Get in close, hit them hard and fast, and most problems solve themselves." "But the casualties," Susan Blake said quietly. "You lost 2 ships and dozens of crew members. How do you justify that kind of sacrifice?" The human captain's expression grew serious. Ma'am, those people who died today, they knew what they were signing up for. Every human in our military volunteers for the job. We don't force anyone to fight. But when good people are in trouble, there's always someone willing to step up and do what needs to be done. Danny Rodriguez had been listening to the conversation while running diagnostic tests on the station's systems. Captain, I have to know. Why did you help us? You don't even know us. We're just strangers from a mining station. Harris looked around at all the faces watching him, people who had been preparing to die just hours before. Son, where we come from, there are no strangers. There are just people we haven't met yet. And when people are in trouble, especially families with children, that makes it our problem too. Dr. Walsh was taking notes on his tablet, trying to understand the human psychology. This concept of protecting strangers, is this common among your species? Doc, it's not just common, it's who we are. Humans figured out millions of years ago that we're stronger together than apart. We call it the pack mentality. Once you're part of our pack, we'll go through hell itself to keep you safe. Lisa Martinez felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Real hope. Not just wishful thinking. Captain Harris, what happens now? The Vorac aren't going to stop with just this one fleet. There are thousands of their ships spread across the galaxy. Commander, that's why we're here. This wasn't just a rescue mission. This was Earth's formal introduction to the galactic community. We've been watching from the outer rim for a while now, learning about the different species and their cultures. When the Vorac started their campaign of genocide, we decided it was time to get involved. Amy Johnson looked confused. But there are only 12 of your ships. The Vorac have fleets that number in the thousands. How can you possibly fight them all? Harris smiled that tired smile again. Miss Johnson, those 12 ships are just the first wave. We've got a lot more where they came from, and we've been preparing for this fight for longer than you might think. Captain Morrison asked the question that everyone was wondering about. How long have humans known about the rest of the galaxy? About 50 years. We developed faster than light travel and started exploring. Same as everyone else. But we found a galaxy that was mostly peaceful, run by species that had forgotten how to fight. We figured it was best to stay quiet and learn what we could. But you could have made contact years ago, Dr. Walsh said. You could have joined the Galactic Cooperative, shared your technology, learned from other species. Harris nodded. We thought about it, Doc. But we also saw what happened when peaceful species met aggressive ones. The cooperative's solution was usually to negotiate or surrender. That doesn't work against enemies like the Vorac. Susan Blake was beginning to understand. So you stayed hidden until someone needed your particular skills. That's about the size of it. We kept our ships in the outer rim territories, far enough away that we wouldn't be noticed but close enough to respond when something like this happened. Lisa Martinez had been thinking about the implications of what Harris was telling them. Captain, if humans join the galactic community now, everything will change. The balance of power, the way conflicts are resolved, the whole structure of civilization. Commander, everything was already changing. The Vorac made sure of that when they started harvesting entire worlds. The old ways of doing things, the negotiation and compromise that only works when both sides want to find a peaceful solution. Sometimes you meet enemies who only understand violence. Amy Johnson had been monitoring her communication equipment throughout the conversation. Captain Harris, I'm picking up reports from across the galaxy. Other human fleets are engaging Vorac forces at a dozen different systems. How many ships do you have? Harris considered his answer carefully. Miss Johnson, Earth has been preparing for interstellar conflict for decades. We've got enough ships and enough trained crews to make the Vorac think twice about their expansion plans. But what happens after the Vorac are defeated? Dr. Walsh asked. Will humans try to conquer the galaxy themselves? The human captain looked genuinely surprised by the question. Doc, we don't want to rule anyone. We've got our own worlds to take care of and our own problems to solve. What we want is a galaxy where people can live in peace without worrying about being harvested by monsters. Danny Rodriguez had been quiet for most of the conversation, but now he spoke up. Captain, there's something I need to know. When this is all over, when the Vorac are gone, will you stay? Will humans become part of the galactic community? Harris looked around at all the faces watching him, people from different worlds and different cultures who had been brought together by shared danger and shared hope. Son, I think we're already part of the community. We just took a different path to get here. Over the following days, as more human fleets arrived in cooperative space and the tide of war began to turn, The galaxy started to change in ways no one had expected. The humans didn't just fight the Vorac. They taught other species how to fight back. They shared their weapons technology, their tactical knowledge, and most importantly, their refusal to give up. The Vorac swarm, which had seemed unstoppable just weeks before, began to retreat as word spread throughout known space. The Deathworlders of Earth had arrived, and they were very, very angry. Lisa Martinez would later write in her official report, "Humanity has joined the galactic community not as conquerors or saviors, but as guardians. They have reminded us all that sometimes the price of peace is the willingness to fight for it." The galaxy would never be the same again.